WhiskyJason here, whiskey from the viewpoint over here in Germany, together today with two guys over in Richmond, Virginia, my hometown. Introduce yourselves.
I'm Dave Cuttino. I'm one of the founders of Reservoir Distillery and the CEO, and I have with me
Nicholas Vaughn. I am the barrel master, barrel man, and all things whiskey taste.
Yay. So, and I have my Reservoir t-shirt on. This is Virginia, by the way, for those of us that do not know the states of America. And so thank you very much. This summer I was at the distillery. I was at your warehouse, and it was very, very awesome. Actually, we met in the bottles I was given here at Provine in Düsseldorf. Once again, thank you very much for that. And we decided to do this tasting. So we have 5 different bottles. I'll show those in a moment. Expedition Whiskey, Dirk says good evening, just in time. B Dram says hello. Marco, the Sea Lord, he actually was with the Navy over here in Germany, says good evening, folks. Räucherlachs, it actually means smoked salmon, says good evening, everyone. Should I pour the drums already to get them some air? Yes. I have mine poured as well. Sven says hello. Oh, sorry. Hello. In English. I hope we have a nice bourbon tasting. And I wrote in German, unfortunately, Moin, which is hi in Northern German. So very, very good.
Moin.
Andreas says here, greetings from Hamburg. And also here off in Ho says hello. And Niels is also there. So about 20-some people are watching. We have about 20-some sets that we sent out here. Just to show you what we have, somewhere in our lineup, we have here the bourbon. The very interesting thing, Dave is going to tell the story about this in a moment. It's 100% corn. We have someplace here, we have our wheat, always with the blue. We have here someplace then the rye. We have someplace here the Hunter and Scott. You can talk about that in a second as well. And we have something which is very unusual for Germany, the Milkman. You have to tell us a little bit about that. Now, everyone out there can please pour the drams into the glasses and get ready for this tasting. But Dave, first of all, tell us a little bit about your crazy idea to start a distillery and use 100% single grain spirits.
Well, one thing that's fun about whenever we get in and do an interview, we will take questions. And we will answer every question that comes through, and we'll talk at length about it. We'd love to do it. So definitely raise your hand and ask whatever you want to, but I'll keep kind of the background stuff simple and to the point. And that is, I started doing this distillery all the way back in 2008. And back then, nobody was doing this stuff. And we were the 3rd distillery outside of Kentucky making bourbon, which is a pretty wild thing to think, considering where the market has gone to now. So if you rewind all the way back to 2008, I was learning to distill at the 2nd distillery outside of Kentucky making bourbon. And, I was
in New York State
and learning the functional reality of operating a distillery, which involved really weighing out lots and lots of grain in mash bill. So if you got a 75 corn, 20 wheat, 5 rye mash bill, I'm doing 800 pounds of corn and 250 pounds of wheat, and then throwing in a couple of bags of barley. And you're doing this stuff, and it actually kind of sucks. It's not as fun as you might think it is. So as I'm like a young man doing this stuff and breaking my back, I started kind of going, they use enzymes in this. And I asked these guys, I was like, hey, why are you using enzymes if we've got malted barley? And they kind of looked at me puzzled and like, well, don't really know why, because the amount of malted barley that you use actually isn't enough to really get enough of an enzymatic change to make it a business proposition, if you will. It'll still work, but you're not going to get as high of a yield. So you throw commercial enzymes on top, and that's where you get the yield in order to make enough whiskey to bottle. So my question was, well, why use the malted barley? It's the most expensive. It's the smallest percentage. And if we're doing this, and they kind of said, well, maybe kind of for flavor. And I was like, well, what if you just did like the Scots and just did 100% corn, which, wasn't really much of a thing in the United States back then. And so that's where the single grain mash bill of corn came from, was an act of, some might say laziness, but I would say it was relatively intuitive.
Yes, ingenious maybe, right?
We
So
like
100% corn, 100% wheat, 100% rye is what we have here. Very, very good. Now the question is then 100% corn bourbon nicht actually a corn whiskey then?
No, it basically, if you look at anything that is bourbon related, it's got to be at least 51% corn. It's got to be under 160 proof, distilled, going to a charred new American white oak barrel at 125 proof or lower. You meet all of that, then it is a bourbon. Typically, a lot of the corn whiskeys are not using new charred American oak. That really kind of puts them in the classification of light whiskey.
Exactly. So corn cannot go in a new charred oak barrel. It can go in a new barrel or a used barrel, but not a charred barrel. And it has to have at least the 80% corn in there. But 100% corn can still be, as we know here, a bourbon. And that's what you've shown, and that's what you have on your label. Very,
I'm
very
going to
good.
hire you for compliance, Jason. You're one of the few people that actually understands that.
Oh, some people don't like me over in Europe. I made Buffalo Trace sweat once, no, twice already over here in Europe. So no, that's kind of important sometimes, right?
Listen, one thing about I'll just interject very quickly about labeling, and the point that we have all these rules is, it really kind of protects consumers. E150A. I don't know if anybody knows what that term is, but that's a coloring agent. Right.
In Germany, we call it Zuckerkultur. You'll find it on some labels on the back, actually, of many European bottles over here.
Yeah, and that's a very simple way to show, like, okay, why is it so important that we have all these compliance and label regulations? Because if you look at our bottles or your samples here, you can look at the color that is actual real natural color. Whereas there are some groups that will just use E150A or would you call it Sucra?
Zuckerkultur.
Sucracolor.
A sugar coloring.
Yeah, and do that. Now imagine if you were not required to put that on a label and differentiating between a properly made whiskey and something that was just masquerading as a whiskey, how difficult that would be. And so you go, all right, when you simplify it, it makes a lot of sense why we have these kind of weird, subtle, esoteric rules that really differentiate what different type of whiskey is.
Yeah, excellent. All right, very, very good. So what we're going to do is we're going to field some questions if someone has them, but we're also going to start our tasting here. And what we're going to have to do is we're going to nose and we're going to taste, and the two of you are going to try to guess what we're tasting. And at the very, very end, we're going to have a quiz, our survey, and you can actually rank the whiskeys, and we can see which of the 5 whiskeys the people over here in Germany like the best. So,
if we get them all right, what do we win?
Your wife gives you a kiss.
Ah, fantastic.
Yes. Oh, by the way, your wife, she wrote a beautiful book, didn't she?
Yes, she did. That, guys, is Make It a Double. It is available on Amazon. It's getting really, really fantastic reviews all over the world. It's about Shelley's about 30 years in the whiskey industry, from her first taste through doing the academy at Bruichladdich for you Scotch drinkers, all the way up to working at a bourbon distillery, Reservoir, and being the director of distillery education. It's part travel book, part memoir, part folklore, part story. It's comedy. It's a great read, and it's a really good one that for people who are new to whiskey, if they want to learn about all the different styles. It's got a lot of lessons in there on nosing, tasting, history. It's great.
So one of the most interesting whiskey books I've ever read, to be very, very honest.
Yeah, no, it's so different from all the other ones out there. We have no shortage of books on whiskey, but this puts it in such a way that it's just so easy to understand. And even if you're a professional in the industry, it's a great refresher of a lot of like kind of really technical stuff that she puts in really easy to understand nuggets of information. But it's a great book, and I highly recommend everybody giving it a read and then leaving a review.
One of the best, 25 euros over here in Europe, or 17 basically in the Kindle edition, worth every single penny. I thoroughly enjoyed it, so I can highly, highly recommend it. And now our plug of the book we've done.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Very, very good. Bozio, good that you're there. You're not late. You're never late. Thank you for coming in. And the old Turinger says, can't be with you, but wish you all a very nice journey on our whiskey experience this evening. So we're going to actually, Nick, you're in the background. We have A, B, C, D, and E. Which whiskey should we start with? You get to be the randomizing factor.
Let's work E backwards.
All right, that's very, very good. So everyone, we're going to go from E, D, C, B, A. There's a randomized factor. What I did, we now randomized them again, and I invite everyone to actually pick out their E glass and their E sample, and to write in the chat what you smell and then what you also taste here. So I don't remember what letter I gave which one. I do have a key, a legend, so I can actually take a look at that in a second. But I do know that the D is the lightest. We have a little saying over here in Germany: the darkest one usually wins. So yeah, we've done a lot of blind tastings like this over the last couple of years. Especially due to COVID and so on, everything's moved on. A lot of things moved online for 2 years. It's moved back now to whiskey fairs and so on. But a lot of the whiskey tastings were online, and so we had the experience that the darkest one usually was the one that won there.
Is that is that including Scotch, or is it all bourbon?
If it's Scotch, it's Irish, whatever it is, and usually we do a lot more. On my channel, we've done a lot more blind tastings with Scotch than anything else in the last couple of years.
Huh? And the darkest usually wins.
Yes,
that's interesting.
Yeah,
is that a an optical kind of like, is it a leading type thing for people?
Yes, and also it usually means it has the most sherry influence.
Yeah, okay.
So very, very simple with Scotch.
The Germans love sherry, I understand.
Yeah, and the peated sherry cask strength, you got a German. You can't say no to that usually.
Look, I have this sitting on my desk right here.
Ah, very good. The 12-year-old. Good job. Yeah. Good job. So look, we have the Whiskey Lover Society. I think he's over in Belgium. Could be the Netherlands. Sometimes I also get confused and forget things. All right, so let's have some tasting notes. I personally... Now, I get a lot of wood. The question is, you do not use normally 52-gallon, 200-liter casks. You're much smaller. Why?
Well, here you go. What's going to be interesting here is that you're going to have a mix. You're going to have some quarter casks, right? And those are going to range from, I'm going to guess based on probably what they have, they're going to be 40-liter casks, is what you're mainly tasting, which is 10 gallons in U.S. numbers. But and there might even be some slightly smaller casks in there. Some of the bottles are going to have 53-gallon or 200-liter casks as well, and they're going to be varying ages. Now, why would somebody use a quarter cask? Well, what it does is when you put ethanol into a barrel, and ethanol is a solvent, and it goes into the wood. That solvent then extracts the flavors from the woods, the vanillins, tannins, lignans, things like that. And that's what gives it the darker color. If you change the wood surface area to volume to liquor ratio, you can extract those wood components quicker. Now, here's the cautionary tale. Now what you're doing is you're messing with, there are two timelines in a barrel as it ages. There is the liquid in the barrel that's interacting with oxygen and oxidizing, and that has a specific timeline. And then you have the extraction from the wood, and that has a specific timeline. So if you change the size of the barrel, you're going to change the timeline of the extraction rate, and suddenly it's not in sync with the way that people are used to for 53s. So the way that you compensate for that is you basically have to create a certain type of distillate that then works with the quarter casks, if that's what your goal is. And you might say, well, how do you know this? And what we have, and Jason was lucky enough to see this stuff, is we'll take barrels and we'll just lay them out over a very, very long time of different sizes. And you can go down those rows and you can taste them and figure out at what point in what barrel certain notes show through. The easiest way to explain this that most people understand that really that drink aged spirits is cognac and Armagnac. Those guys make certain distillate. They cut into the tails a little bit more to get certain compounds. that in certain size barrels under certain conditions at 3 years, 2 months, and three days, a certain note will show up for 2 weeks, and then they capture that, and then they blend that with other things in order to create a certain profile. That's literally what you're doing when you start messing with barrel sizes, is what notes are going to show when, and then you bottle them at that time in order to capture the notes. So you can really make whatever profile that you want to. And what'll be fun is just if you guys want to try to guess what the age of some of these whiskeys are and things like that while we're trying to guess which one is which, you can guess barrel size and then age, and we'll tell you if you're right.
Very, very good. Now, I'm always confused with the term quarter cask. Lefroy, quarter cask means 125 liters. For you, it means 40 liters. It's always the question, the quarter of what? Is it a sherry butt, 500 liters? Or is it 200 liters? And even that doesn't work out with yours.
Yeah, quarter cask is a euphemism that the Scotch guys came up with to describe anything that was less than a 200-liter cask.
Yeah.
Now, when you really get down into it, there's about 8 cask sizes below a 200-liter cask that all have very specific names. Now, the smallest cask that we use, that Scotch guys will use, is called a blood tub. And that is about a 5 to 8 gallon cask that was used in slaughterhouses to catch blood, hence the blood tub thing, or in a butcher shop. But the reason why the Scotch guys started using those is that size barrel is the perfect size barrel that you can put on a donkey or a mule and take off roading around the King's taxman on the road. Mm-hmm. And that's why going back to the 1600s, they were using these size barrels. So it's not something that's actually a new invention. The Scotch guys pretty much have been doing this stuff for 500 years. And it's just the reason why not a lot of people actually use it is because it is a lot more expensive way to make whiskey than using the 53s.
Exactly. All right. So Luna, I'm going to say hi to you. She's actually down in southern Germany. The translation for gallons, please. 1 gallon is 3.8 liters. So if you can't do 3.8, go for 4. Mm-hmm. Marco says with our sample number E, smells like extra tart dark chocolate, leather, old wooden furniture. On the nose, we have old wooden furniture, bread, roasted aromas, maybe some ginger, maybe some chili, some chocolate. So a cooling moment, mint, sugar cane, wood, actually like a woodworking shop is the word he used here. A little bit of Coca-Cola, a little bit of herbal moment, that leather chair going on. Marco actually says positive memories come here, like visiting grandmother or grandpa in their living room and having a good time. That's what he associates with this smell. Here we have black tea, cherry jelly, milk chocolate, and some ginger bite. And probably last person, loads of oak and spice, Christmas bakery, sweetened black tea, and maraschino cherries. So can the two of you guess in which direction that might go? And during that time, while you're talking, we can actually taste this and write down our tasting notes for E, please. So any guesses? You want to?
I think I know what it is. It's probably this guy, don't you think?
I think it's that guy as well.
Yeah.
Off the screen, they're holding something up that we can't see.
Are we allowed to ask questions of people?
Of course. Yes. And first of all, I'm going to say cheers to everyone drinking along, because now we can drink the first one.
Can you show us the color?
Mm-hmm.
And I also want to see. Give me the legs on that sucker. A little twirl, and let's see the legs.
All right. So let's see what the legs do. Let me get rid of a little bit of the blue hue from my screen here. Can you see the legs?
Yeah, they're sticky and very.
There's a lot of very thin legs that are immediately up here, almost like a spider web.
The wood, the mint, cooling mint.
And there's a lot of. I know what it is just from the taste, because I know your products a little bit.
I know that's there.
Okay. Does it attack the palate like when you first taste it? Is it like a big? Is it a pop?
There's a little bit of a punch involved. There is a little bit of an oak punch involved as well.
Mm-hmm.
There's a little. All right. So I'm not going to say anything else and wait for people to write something here. A little bit of the fun is not that I guide and lead and maybe misdirect them, but actually shut up and let them write down what they're tasting here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So are we supposed to tell you what it is, or?
Oh, you can give your first suggestion. What do you think it could be? Just as from the nosing notes.
Oh, I'm gonna.
The nosing note, for me, it leads me to believe that is the Milkman sample.
Okay, why?
The big one to me, that's the giveaway, is the cooling mint effect, and who made that note. That's one I seem to find quite a bit in those types of barrel finishes that we do. The chocolate, there's classic chocolate notes in that whiskey, so those are kind of layups, and we find those in our other whiskeys, but for me, it's the mint.
Yeah, a big one that people throw around here in the U.S. that Germany may not be familiar with is Tootsie Rolls.
Yes, we're not familiar at all with Tootsie Rolls. I'm sorry. Yes, I actually know what you're talking. My childhood Christmas, we'd have a Tootsie Rolls. Actually, we had a stocking full of those. Yes. We don't know what that is over here. The same thing happens when people in Britain talk about their childhood candies. It's even Americans and Germans kind of go, I have no idea.
No idea. But suffice to say that there's a big chocolate note to Tootsie Rolls, which for me is usually a dead giveaway with the Milkman, because it's not something. It's chocolate in a way that you typically don't see in bourbons. And so, when I taste it, I'm like, oh yeah, it tastes unlike anything else for me.
So on here we had black tea. We had that already. I'm sorry. Okay, good. Loads of oak and spice is what the taste has. Christmas Bakery again, the sweetened black tea. All right. So here, the taste. Green wood, freshly mown meadow, chocolate caramel, barrel sugar, a little bit of pepper. So here we have syrupy, leather, baked apple, almond, raisin, rum, sweetness, and the sweet bitter game. Okay, no, totally different. Sorry. She asked if a Chutchin would be like a Tootsie Roll. A Tootsie Roll is more like a Mao caramel. So sorry, it's more of a caramel chocolate than it is anything else. So, all right. So
I'm not sure how you describe Tootsie Roll. It really is big.
Yeah, exactly. It's one of those things I'll have to arrange maybe one day that I bring sweets over here and actually do that. So, I'm going to say something's missing on this. Now, the Milkman, the basis of it, is that a wheat or is it a bourbon or is it a rye? What's the base?
It's a bourbon.
It's a bourbon. So you'd have that corn moment going on in there. Now, in case someone says, hey, Jason, I don't know how to write this in English, write it in German. I can translate on the fly. It's no problem. We can work around that. Now, I'm sorry, it's not the Milkman.
Well, really?
Yes, unfortunately, we are not that great at describing things.
Well, I'm excited for the Milkman to come up then.
Yeah, exactly. Only one person, Dick, had the cooling mint. So I didn't get very much mint at all there, but we have different types of mints. We have the spearmints and peppermints and other type of mint moment going on there. But
I would say that's the regular Reservoir bourbon then.
Okay, why the bourbon?
Well, because it's generally with the Milkman, it's driven by what the notes that the bourbon has, but still, a lot of the main descriptors that you have there, you could also apply to the Reservoir bourbon. Now, the wheat and the rye for me are going to be dramatically different there.
Now, tell me how the rye and the wheat is different, and then I'll tell you which one it is. And everyone else, please write your comments in the chat. That would interest me the most.
So, there's three things that we make here at the distillery every day that we distill. And that is 100% corn bourbon. And then we do 100% wheat mash bill for wheat whiskey. And then 100% rye. Now, when you're labeling, getting back to that, a wheat whiskey and a rye whiskey follow all the same rules as bourbon. It's just got to be at least 51% wheat or 51% rye. Now, we just take it all the way up to 100, and then there you go.
Very good. We're learning a little bit of American English here via the Reservoir whiskey. Fantastic, gorgeous. Thank you, Marco. All right. It is a very, very interesting way to approach the tasting. We've done this before with Brown-Forman. We did it with Woodford Reserve. We've done it with Jack Daniels. We're going to do it with Ben Riach in a couple of weeks. And so I thought I would do it with you as well. It's a very unique approach that I've developed, and I think it's actually fun for everyone involved.
I actually love it, and it teaches us something because it's a lot different when we have the samples in front of it, because we'll just taste the samples and go, yeah, it's this.
Right, exactly. Right? I tasted, I knew exactly what it was. I knew your products, right?
Yeah. But hearing you guys describe it and then us going like, okay, how do we? Because there is something really, and I don't know how much you talk about this on your show, Jason, but the art of nosing and tasting, and this is great. Like Shelley talks about this in her book, Make It a Double, at length. The way that your sensory systems process this information is absolutely fascinating, and not everybody is going to taste the same thing. And just because like you maybe are trying really, really hard to smell a certain note, it's not that you're not trying hard enough or you're not good enough. It could just be that you don't have those sensory receptors. Yeah. And so everybody's tasting notes are generally different. Yeah. And this is why we don't typically put out a lot of tasting notes unless people specifically ask for them. And then we put that caveat in there. We're like, okay, here's what we taste. And so for us, and you'll find this at a lot of distilleries, you know, Nick and I are both on the tasting panel, but we have a range of people that taste that a lot of us, we know what notes different people can't taste. Or more importantly, what notes only one person can taste. And that's how you typically find faults. And we learned to do this. Why? Because we have had whiskeys that have slipped out that have had faults. And then we learned, okay, how did we miss this and why? And we've refined our tasting methodologies in order to pick that stuff up. So doing it this way, Jason, is actually really cool. I've never seen anybody do it like this. It's fun.
Now, just to repeat again, and this is something that many, many people in Germany have not really understood yet. In the UK with Scotch whiskey, it's forbidden. So not in UK, actually in England, it's not forbidden. In Scotland, it's forbidden to use enzymes. Now in Ireland, it is not. In Germany, it is not. And in the USA, it is not. Most of the places in Germany use enzyme. You talk about the yield. You talk about how much alcohol do we get out of there? How much can we convert into the sugar so the yeast can actually eat it and put out the alcohol? And that happens with almost all the distilleries all over America. One of the very, very, very few whiskeys that did not have that enzyme in it was recently a Woodford Reserve that Chris Morris talked about, that there was enough rye in there that they actually were able to not use enzymes, and they promoted it as something special. We didn't use enzymes, yay!
Wait, they use malted rye?
No, they used malted barley in there. They had 38% malted barley in that recipe.
Yeah, and that gets back to exactly what we were saying at the beginning. Yep. It's like, how much malted barley do you need? Yep. And it's a lot.
It's a lot. Exactly.
To the point that it changes whiskey profiles.
It does.
Yep.
All right. So the last person says lots of wood reminds me of a Texas corn spirit. So I guess this is 100% corn, very sweet, a little bit of Coca-Cola, some ginger, quite oily, nutty, and cherries. So I'm sorry, everyone's wrong so far. E is the wheated whiskey.
Oh, really?
Now, tell me from your personal, professional viewpoint, what should we have tasted or smelled with a 100% wheated whiskey? I get a lot of oak, and the wheat is very soft.
Yeah. And actually, what's great is the wheat is so subtle, right? It's a very kind of rich, round whiskey with a very, very long finish. And it is a very subtle whiskey. And as you go through these, the whiskeys will be bigger, right? That you wouldn't pick up all the subtleties of the wheat if you really kind of got deep into it. But for me, with the wheat, I get anise all day long. And that's something that most people get with rye instead of wheat. But for me, I pick up anise.
Interesting. Yeah. And Nick, what about you?
frequently I get honey, a graham cracker. The ginger note is there. I noted it down here on my notes, but the wheat was my backup guess to that Milkman.
Exactly.
It's kind of softer notes and everything. So hearing the heavy notes that I picked out on my first guess, that was kind of where I was thinking on the next one.
Excellent. Now, once again, translation problems. We don't have graham crackers in Germany. I don't know how we make cheesecake without graham crackers and many other desserts as well for the crust and so on, but we just don't have graham crackers. We have something else called Spekulatius, which is like a German gingerbread type of thing, but it's a totally different tasting profile than the typical gingerbread. I'm sorry, the graham crackers we have in the States.
What about s'mores?
Yeah, we don't do s'mores over here either, really. So we can, that's a little bit of our problem. Sorry. What a shame, huh?
And somebody asked, yes, enzymes in the 100% rye. Have to.
That was the reason why we had that before. Yeah. All right. Very, very good. All right. Very nice. Very nice. All right. So we're going to go now to our next one, which is going to be D. Now, this is the lightest of the 5. Just take a look at the color here. Maybe that helps you more than us.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Oh, yeah. I know where I'm at as well. So let's see what the people in the chat write down for the D then. Now, you started 2008, which means you were the 3rd new bourbon distilling company outside of Kentucky. We had MGP, right?
Yes, forgetting MGP, Franklin, or like kind of the big, private label guys.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, we're talking. Does anybody know who the 1st and 2nd were?
So yeah, let's ask the people here. So the first question here is: a graham cracker comparable to a Digestive, an English biscuit? No.
No, not even
exactly. It's like comparing a whole corn roll with a wheat roll. They're different. They're both rolls, but they're totally different in texture and profile and taste. So they're just different. Sorry.
Yeah, and I don't know how one would describe a graham cracker.
Yeah.
The graham.
Yeah. Exactly. Who is graham and what is the graham and the graham cracker? Yeah. All right. So don't worry about that. All right. Very, very good. So yes, if someone knows that. I know that number 2 was up in New York State, right?
Correct.
And that's where you actually learned how to do that. That's Hudson today is the brand name.
Yep.
Say the real name of the distillery.
Tuttletown.
Exactly. I forgot. It was Tuttletown, Tuttle Hill, something like that.
Yeah.
That was always a thing.
But everybody knows it by Hudson now.
Yep. What was the number 1?
Another Virginia distillery.
Yes.
Sazerac bought in the early aughts, and before they were purchased, they were the oldest continuously owned family distillery in the USA. Yep. And that is Bowman Brothers.
Exactly. I have a bottle way up there someplace with Bowman Brothers there. Yes, that was a very, very interesting distillery. So Virginia actually had laws before many other states to actually allow distilleries to open up, apparently, right?
It was in the world of craft. Actually, there were a few guys that you would think it would be harder to open a distillery in Virginia, but because it's what we call a control state. The government controls all the liquor here. Because of that, it was just very well defined, and you could actually get things going. So there were a number of traditional distilleries that were here that the state understood, and then we had a kind of a proliferation of vodka distilleries in the 90s, which then opened the door for. And I grew up in Virginia, so that's why I wanted to put it here. Bourbon has such a great historical culture with Virginia that this is bourbon land. So why wouldn't you have a distillery here? The climate is fantastic for aging barrels, and if anybody ever tells you that you can't make bourbon outside of Kentucky, you could always win a bar bet with Virginia Gentleman, which is made by Bowman's forever. And also, everybody should keep in mind the first bourbon was made in Virginia in 1614. And by accident, and then nothing was made here for a while. And then when the first bourbons were made in what is now called Kentucky, that was before Kentucky existed. It was actually part of Virginia.
Virginia. Exactly. So many people understand that West Virginia was part of Virginia. Okay, that makes sense. But actually that the Virginia went all the way out to Kentucky. I didn't know that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's a lot of fun explaining that to Kentucky people.
Yeah. They don't like that. No.
It's all good fun, though. We all have a good time together.
Well, yeah, that's very good. Now, tell me a little bit about the distillery. Are you using pot stills? Are you using column stills? How do you produce?
So everything we do here, when you get back to the size of some of the quarter casks that we use, in order to make juice that works with those, you kind of got to use pot stills. So everything that we do here is pot distillation. And everything is a couple of neat differentiating factors for us is all of our grain comes from within about 45 miles of the distillery. And so, and also the barrels all come from Virginia, where we cut down trees, turn them into staves, air dry them for a couple of years, then send them to our cooper. Speyside Cooperage has a facility here in Virginia. So really what you get, the focus is what does Virginia taste like, right? So, we also do open top fermentation. We've got all of our own yeast strains that we work with some really smart guys out of Kentucky to make sure that they're propagated.
Firm Solution,
who is part of which distillery?
Dr. Pat Heist, which is Wilderness Trail.
Pat Heist at Wilderness Trail. And great guys. We've been working with them for a number of years.
So if you ever want to see Wilderness Trail, we import those into Germany.
Absolutely fabulous whiskey. And they're actually in Danville, Kentucky, which is the first capital of Kentucky, which nobody knows that. So
I did not know that either.
Yeah, that's how you can beat a Kentucky person. Explain to them that Virginia owns bourbon. Either way, we digress.
Well, you can beat most Americans by telling what is the capital of Kentucky. It's like, no, not Louisville. It's like, really?
Where's Kentucky?
Okay, that's the other thing. All right, well, I'm going to tell you a nice little story. I'm going to digress for another half a second. This is New Riff, also from Kentucky. Do you see this little black thing there?
Mm-hmm.
About 1 from 10 times I'm asked, what are they blacking out?
Yeah, and they didn't do a good job of it. It's all bled around everywhere.
And the first couple times I was like, I don't understand what you're talking about. And they point and I said, what are they blacking out? He said, that's Kentucky. I did not know. And that's why I said, this is Virginia. I did not know. And so we don't. Now, if I showed you the state outline of a state in Germany, you would not know either. And so it's only fair to actually allow Germans to go, well, all right, we don't need to know the outlines of all 50 states, do we?
Yeah, but it's let me ask y'all a question. Like, how much do you guys understand the regionalization of whiskey in the United States at this point? Because if you look at like Scotland, everybody kind of gets like Highland,
Lowlands, Highlands, Speyside, and so on, right?
Islands, whatever. The United States is very much going that path that Scotland went down probably 30 years ago, 40 years ago. That's where they're going to start picking up what the shapes of the states are, or at least the regions like, well, here's the Southeast, right? Or here's Texas, here's the Midwest.
Exactly.
And what's interesting is, and this is one of the reasons why, we talk about like, what's special about Reservoir? Why do we do it the way that we do it? Like, okay, this is what Virginia tastes like. The climate here factors into how it ages. The grains, there is significant terroir in all the grains that we have. You can take our rye, put it against any other rye, it's not going to taste the same. It just isn't. And that's getting into terroir of where that rye is grown. The air, the local friendly bugs, because we do open top fermentation and we've got 9 other production facilities around us. We got wild yeast everywhere that's coming over. That factors in the equipment, the shape of it. Are you doing continuous? Are you doing pot distillation? But you factor all those things in. The climate, where you're getting your barrels from, the wood, and where the grain is grown, really does make an appellation. And Virginia does taste different than Kentucky, and Kentucky does taste better than, well, I just said that wrong. It does taste different than Tennessee.
Be careful there. Yeah.
Tennessee people are like, hey, And it's not to say that one is right or the best. They all taste good, right? It's just they taste a little bit different. And again, that's what makes this fun. If everything tastes the same, who cares? You buy the cheapest thing out there and go home, and then probably drink wine.
All right, you probably drink wine. Why not? All right, let's go to the nose first, and we'll go back over to the regionalization in a moment. Now, on the nose, we have green beans, which I think is unique. Fresh Espring, Polemo, lemongrass, a little bit of unripe or not yet ripe stone fruit. So D on the nose, very sweet, honey-like. I actually totally agree with that one. Green banana, fresh, a little bit dewy grass, some light citrus notes, agree as well. We have here on the nose a little bit of barrel char, wood, a little bit of greenness, a little bit of youth, citrus, yellow fruits as well there. And so we're going to stop with that with those three people. We'll move to the taste in a second. I'm going to add my note 1 second. I get a very light caramel with a tiny little tobacco in the background there, but just a little bit. There's not that wood that I associate normally with Reservoir. All Reservoir whiskeys are like in your face. Here have some wood, like it, and this is a little bit different from your normal profile. Now that gave it away, I think, right?
Yeah, well, maybe.
Look at the colors. That should give it away as well.
Yeah, the colors. Nick, you want to tackle this one, and then why?
I think the color seems to be the driving factor. Putting some of those other notes up there. The banana is one that the banana can go either way for two whiskeys, but pairing that with the color kind of drives us to our guess here.
Mm-hmm. But a diacetyl too is like that's a certain note that you're going to pick up based off of a particular style of equipment, and that is a giveaway for me. So you want us to say what we think it is?
Please do. Please guess, and we can adapt and change. They're going to write down. You have Hunter and Scott. Now, tell us a story of Hunter and Scott if you're right. All right.
So Hunter and Scott originally was something that we made an entry-level whiskey. So it was a bit, and we wanted to get the price down. And so it's less aging, slightly lower proof, right? And we did that with all Reservoir barrels that were a bit younger. And the profile was great and it worked good, but we couldn't make enough of it. And so we'd always prided ourselves on being from grain to glass. We never sourced anything. Well, it just got to the point that we were like, okay, we're going to have to figure out a way to make more of this stuff. So Nick came from the world of coffee, and coffee has even more notes than whiskey has. And he has an incredible nose and palate, and he does all of our blending. So whenever we're working with quarter casks, we're blending different things together in order to get an even profile. It's what we call the 2-4-2 rule, right? And so when
what is the 2-4-2 rule?
If you have 8 barrels, two are going to suck, 4 are going to be average, and 2 are going to be really amazing, but you combine them together and they make something better than the 2 best ones.
Well, 2 are going to be below average, 2 are going to be average, and 2 are going to be above average. I hope you don't put barrels in there that suck.
But what we did, and a quick story behind why we had this, we had all these other barrels in the warehouse. And I was very lucky to have been at Royal Lochnagar and gotten a behind the scenes tour. And what's neat about Royal Lochnagar is that it is a training place for Diageo people. So they have a dunnage house that is just filled with other distilleries' barrels. And so you might have like, this line arm is at this angle, this distillery, this is what that distillate tastes like in this type of barrel after this amount of time. I got to taste a 36-year-old Lagavulin in a hogshead. What? Awesome. They just had all these like silent distilleries, amazing stuff. And they were like, yeah, we take other distilleries, equipment, regions, people, and we store them here. And this is how people can taste and understand what makes these things all different. And I wanted to do that at Reservoir. So a while ago, I would just buy barrels here, from there. So we had all these different distilleries. And that's where when the Hunter and Scott issue came up, I kind of turned Nick loose in the warehouse and said, take any of these old barrels, see what you can figure out if we combine barrels from reference with barrels at Reservoir. Like, how much Reservoir does it take to reservoir a blend of stuff to come up with the same profile? So why don't you tell
in Scotland, I would say 20% for our versus our grain and our single malt. What did you arrive at about?
I'm sorry, repeat that question.
In Scotland, we need about 20% of single malts for 80% grain to remain that flavor profile. What did you arrive at?
Yeah, he's saying, like, how much reservoir did we need to put in order to make it a reservoir whiskey?
About 50%.
Okay.
Yeah, which that gets into, Reservoir is a big, as you were describing, it's big, heavy oak. Like on the oak spectrum, it's way out on the side. But when you're dealing with some of these old complex barrels, and some of these barrels are pretty old, how you can get that to keep it really in that realm of reservoir, it takes a little bit more. But why don't you tell them how you came up with the blend for it?
Just taking a number of different barrels from different locations, which were all very similar mash bills, but even in their similarities in mash bill, they were, one is over here, one is out here. They're very different tasting products on their own. And just working with our warehouse, where we've got a range of, full size, the 53-gallon barrels on down, and each of those at every different age has something different. So we need more vanilla, we need more caramel. Well, that's going to come from over here, or that's going to come at this age. And it was actually a really lucky find that we could move into some of our larger format barrels, which actually helped build this product the way we wanted it. So going into our larger format barrels and then working with other large format barrels was the trick to getting this to work.
Yeah, and that's why you see the color of it is very different from the other whiskeys, because even though some of these things might be the same age, 4 years in a quarter cask versus 4 years in a 53-gallon barrel is a very, very different animal. That's a lot of oak that you've gotten out of that quarter cask.
All right. So very briefly here, the taste: nice burnt caramel, vegetables, mild. A little bit of filigrane is what we say in English. Very, very delicate mouthfeel is the word I would translate here. Freshly sawn wood, something green, lemon, peel, fresh lemon, a little dusty, vanilla pastry. Reminds me of a spring or early summer day, and the fruits in the trees and bushes are starting to grow. Everything is green and fresh. So on the palate, punchy, spicy, walnut, bitterness, unripe bananas. People are thinking it's the rye, would be his guess as well. We have here sweet green banana, cinnamonies, which of course is that cinnamon. A little bit of walnut again. Here we have dry, tart, green star fruit. Also the plantains. I don't know what plantains are. Do you know?
Plantains.
Okay, plantains. Yes, very good.
Caribbean bananas.
Very good. Now I know what we're talking about. Very nice.
Fried plantains. Woo, good.
Good. So what I can actually say here, I'm going to put us back up into this format. It is the Hunter and Scott, and this is a barrel. This is a bottle that we don't have over here in Germany yet, right?
Yet, but we're going to be over there at Bar Convent, Berlin in October, and we'll have some of this. And then I'm also going to be down in France right after that. So we should be, we do have some of this, and getting ready to go over to the UK as well. Good. And they will, I'm sure, have it in Master of Malt and places like that.
Yes, so those cooked bananas, those plantains. I just had to black out for a second. Forgive my ignorance.
Does anybody can anybody guess maybe what
age
distilleries
are
represented in here?
So on the label it says here Bourbon whiskey, but it says product of Virginia.
You've got an old label. This is the new label. So
all right.
You have is not correct for that. That was before the labels were done.
You're right. Okay. Excuse me.
I'll tell you what it said. I'll read what it said. Oh God, I can't read that. My eyes aren't that good.
It's crap getting old, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. It doesn't say on the front, Nick. It says on the back. Well, basically, it says we have to say everywhere. In the U.S., we have to put where it's distilled, where it's bottled, and where it's aged. So this is distilled in Kentucky, Indiana, and Virginia. So there you got 3 states, and then aged and bottled in Virginia at Reservoir.
All right, very, very good. So do you know Ralphie from the YouTuber, one of the grandfathers of whiskey tubers? No. He has this little magnifying glass, and I basically took his thing, so I could almost read here what it says here: handmade, single run, blah blah blah, aged for 1.5 years, and so on. Okay, very good. But that is tiny.
Yeah, no, that's what the feds like have you say, right? Or
exactly
minimum, so you can fit it all on there. But
all right, the question is, who is Hunter and who is Scott?
I am well, no, I'm not Hunter. I'm Scott.
Yes, I was going to say you're Scott. I heard. I'm Hunter. Oh,
I am Hunter. Nick will be Hunter today. How's that?
Yeah, he's going to be Hunter today.
But so Jay and I, who were running Reservoir together forever, his middle name is Hunter, and my middle name is Scott. And so this was our second bottle, right? So we called it Hunter and Scott, and that's how it came to be. And the Scotch Whisky Society sued us for using the word Scott.
Yes, exactly. You had a cease and desist letter, didn't you?
Yeah, sure did. They don't like anything that's remotely close to Scotch, but yeah, it's fine.
All right, so we're going to move now to C, and I invite you to please write down your tasting notes, and if you want to, before that, your nosing notes. This is actually one of the darkest of the 5. So I don't know if that gives something away to you or not. Yeah. All right. Yes, a very interesting thing. Now you mentioned the question about regionalization. Now Germans have understood that we have Kentucky straight bourbon, and they now understand slowly, I'm working on it, that there's a differentiation between bourbon and rye. Even that is something they didn't understand at the beginning. So we're very at the basics. Yeah.
They'll really understand it here with this tasting, right?
Yeah, so we're still working on that. And they now understand that we have an Indiana MGP and maybe something else. Yep. Now, Jack Daniels always made sure that Tennessee whiskey was Tennessee whiskey, and everyone understands that with Dickel and so on. And then we have Texas. And besides that, over here in Germany or in Europe, whiskey is kind of, at least American whiskey, and bourbon is a little bit unknown in very, very many other cases. So there's a lot of just not yet available. So that's one of the biggest problems we have over here is availability.
Mm-hmm. No, that's really true. The thing that I found is in Germany, Scotch has, when it comes to whiskey, Scotch has got a really nice position in the market, but traditionally there's a lot of spirits that within the schnapps realm and beyond that are really, really fascinating traditional like liquors, I guess the right way to describe it.
Spirits, liquors, yes.
Yeah. And honestly, I love going to countries where they still have that, where, whiskeys haven't really totally penetrated, because it just makes a really, really rich tapestry of different things to try. Yep. And, whiskey is very different from what traditional German spirits are. Wow. So it's no surprise that it's taken a little bit of time to get in there. But the funny thing is, just right next door, France is like one of the biggest consumers of whiskey in the world.
Yep.
Right.
But most of it does come from Scotland, even there.
Yeah. Yeah. And most of that is also just straight up blended whiskey.
Yeah, exactly. So blended Scotch, not even single malt. That's true.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So I've been going to whiskey fairs, whiskey festivals over here in Germany now for about 6 years. And there have, up until now that I have my own booth, which is American whiskeys, I have never seen at a German whiskey fair just a booth for any brand of American whiskey. For Irish whiskey, yes, for German whiskey and so on. And it's just slowly happening There have been very, 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 very few that have actually done that. And so there's a lot of education needed and a lot of just actually helping the people realize that there's more out there than the things that we can just get at the normal. We buy our Friday evening at the gas station. We buy our Jim Beam and our Jack Daniels. And at the supermarket, we buy the better stuff. And our specialty stores, we buy the good stuff.
Yeah. Well, you do it. You know, Woodford Reserve's got pretty good penetration in Germany, doesn't it?
Yes, but I don't think they've ever had just a booth at a whiskey fair. That actually belongs to Brown-Forman, and they have all the different products there.
Yeah, because I was about to say that at Bar Convent in 19. I thought that they did, but you're correct. It was actually a Brown-Forman booth. Yep. Just Woodford Reserve is the biggest brand.
Exactly.
Faced out. They had a whole bar built. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. I'm sorry. There actually were some booths just with Michters now for the last 2 years. So I'm wrong at that one. There have been Michters actually have had their own thing here. All right. So we have some nice little things here. We have on the nose nutty, butter cake, a bit of a cinnamon roll, and some corn. Here we have on the nose wood, leather chair, brown sugar, powerful, great nose. Reminds me of a Woodford Reserve Double Oak.
Yeah.
Here we have some cookies, wheat toast, beet syrup, Mako. I'm sorry, but your green beans and your beet syrup, I'm not getting that. All right, maple syrup, yes, caramel, wonderful. Here, wood. Yeah, he said beet as in red beets. Yeah, Harvard beets.
You know, it's I always feel like my ears perk up whenever I hear beets, because beets are typically, that's a note that you can associate with geosmin, which we consider typically a fault.
Right.
So when people say beet, we're like,
wait, what's going on here?
Yeah. But I know these samples, and I know we don't have geosmin in that. So
yeah. So this is actually very good. Now we have our wood, a lot, capital letters, hints of licorice, and lots of forest honey, and I like. So we have notes, we have cacao, we have Mirabella jam, and rich thick. So very, very, very good. Of the 5 that we have here, I'm going to say on the nose, this is probably going to be my favorite as well. Maybe I'm giving something away here. So maybe he actually means with the beet, he might actually mean sugar beet syrup instead of the beet. So what we do over in Germany is we don't have sugar cane. We actually use sugar beets, and we have a byproduct instead of molasses. We have sugar beet syrup, and it's what we actually put on our bread and our toast and so on. I think that's what he probably meant. I absolutely right. Thank you for that. Yeah, exactly. That's what he means. The beet syrup. Yes. Okay, good. My mistake. I translated wrong here what he said. So
that's right.
Yeah, exactly. Alarm! Red alert!
Next, going to flip out. Was this? What happened?
All right. So powerful. You please taste wood, nuts, cherry, old leather, a little bit of youth, tobacco. I like.
Yeah.
So, do the two of you have a suspicion?
I have a suspicion that we're moving back to our Milkman.
Why?
The tobacco note that keeps coming up is one that I get. The wheat toast is something that I get. And to me, when I kind of think of that, I almost think of just kind of like a fresh mound of dough that's about to become wheat bread is one that I get that is sometimes similar to that. The licorice notes in there, a lot of that points towards the Milkman.
Yeah, I agree. I got it between two. It's either the bourbon or the Milkman, and the reason why I'd go with Milkman is a 70 corn, 15 wheat, 15 rye, and there's a couple of key notes in there that I attribute specifically to rye and specifically to wheat and specifically to bourbon. So to me, I'm hearing a blend of the three, and so I'm going to go with Milkman as well.
Now, why did you give it the name Milkman? Is there milk in here?
Nick, you want to do this one?
Well, if this is the one we're speaking of, it is a part of our Holland series, which was a series where we were trying to create whiskeys using a time machine, if you will. And we had Mac McCormick, who owns the largest whiskey grill in Virginia, came in one day, and I forget what the bottle was, but he had just finished a bottle and There you go.
A 1960s distillery in Kentucky.
Yeah, and essentially it was, there you go. That's the last bottle ever. And he's a great historian and custodian of history, of whiskey records and history. And he said, you know, I think using your single grain whiskeys and maybe with a little ingenuity and using a bigger barrel that has had stout beer in it, we can blend up this bourbon mash bill that we know, and we can try and recreate this whiskey. So we, you know, that sounds great to us. So after a few great days of experiments, we throw some whiskey, you know, fully aged in our small barrel. At the time, it was 5-gallon barrels at about 2.5 years. This mash bill goes into this larger barrel that our buddies down the street at Ardent Craft Ales had aged a stout beer in. That first one finishes for about 6 months and pulls some of that barley malt character from the beer. And that barrel was really funny because it was laying on its side, and by the time we bottled it, there was only about as much whiskey as the barrel thief could reach down and get in there.
Wow.
Tasting it. We've been tasting it so frequently. It was a show piece whenever we had someone in to show off. So that was the first of the Holland series. We did another one that was the Holland's Blade Rummer, a very similar project, but stout beer aged in a Dominican rum cask. And I was told I could name that anything as long as it wasn't a pun. And then
let's see here. Do you have the Blade Runner here? We have the Blade Runner from Holland. Yes.
Blade Runner.
Man.
Yeah.
There's the Ghost as well. What's that?
That's the first one that Nick described.
And so the Holland's Milkman was the third in line, and the difference from the Holland's Milkman and the other two is ex-bourbon cask, but it has a lactose-heavy milk stout was the stout beer component that was aged in it.
So for your beer people, it's essentially stout beer that has lactose in it.
Gotcha.
Hence
the
the
Ghost
milk.
was the first one. I think that's the first one I've ever seen from you, by the way.
Yep.
And then the second one I've seen is the Milkman. I don't think I've ever seen the Blade Rummer. So that's something.
Really?
No.
I'll tell you what then. I'll bring a bottle to Berlin.
BCB. Yeah, please do. I'm not going to say no to that. That'd be excellent.
Absolutely.
All right. Very, very good. So on the palate and the taste, we have here a white pepper, orange peel, dryness, tanginess remains. On the palate, very rich, oily mouthfeel, creamy sweetness, leather, tea, and a little bit of tannin. So sweet syrup. Look at that. The word syrup comes every single time I have the feeling here, which I agree. Lots of aromatic forest honey again, quite herbal, my favorite so far. So Dirk just says, please bring it to Germany, please. And on the flavor here, we have orange marmalade, the English one, a little bit of cereal, delicious. So in America, and we do have the Milkman here for RC. This is my favorite. We're at $125 basically. Everything else in America that we have here is basically $45. Now over here in Germany, due to taxes and shipping and blah, 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 we're running about 89 euros now for the bottles. So the wheat, the bourbon, and the rye are all at 89 euros. And unfortunately, this is not available, nor is this yet. So, but we're working on it, right, Dave?
There are 2 bottles that are available in Germany that unfortunately we don't have right now, but they are like the Holland series. I like to look at that as it's a finishing series.
Right.
Barrel we finish it. We have something called Maison De Queive, which is our bourbon finished in red wine casks. So we've had some Burgundy Grand Cru. We've done a Meritage, what's going to be in Germany is from a Meritage cask. We also have in Germany, I think, what did we send? 10 cases of the
10 or 12 or 15.
About 15 cases of something that's very, very special. It is a cognac finish with a collaboration we did with Francois Voyer. Which is a really beautiful cognac house. What we did during COVID was we shipped them samples of our stuff. They shipped us samples of theirs, and we let them pick what basically mash bill of our stuff was going to go into their barrel. And then we took, 10 over barrels that then we picked what of their assemblage was going to go into our barrels, and then we would bottle them and then put them together. The stuff that we made was a wheated rye. in one of their 400-liter cognac casks.
Ooh.
Oh my God, that might be one of the best things I think we have ever made. And
when you say that, you know what you're talking about.
And it's in Germany. There's about 15 cases. That we've got another 5 cases that are going to the UK, and then that's it.
Right.
Until I think we're going to get another barrel from Prince of Oyer maybe in springtime. So
that means I have to contact Hava, HAWE, and I will have to. Okay, I'm gonna go on their website after we get off here. I'm gonna try to buy something.
Yeah, and I hope that they still have it, because we delivered into them and they called within a week on another order, because I think they've already sold out.
Excellent, very good. Probably not then. Then I have to wait for the next order.
Definitely call. See if you can get it.
All right, so we're gonna. Of all the 5 here, I must admit the C is my favorite. Now the second favorite is the B for me. I'm hoping that a couple people write down their tasting and nosing notes here for the B. So if anyone knows me a little bit, maybe they can guess what it is. There are certain things I really like, and there are certain things that I sometimes like a little bit better.
So is he omitting one? So we're working backwards from B. Oh, no, right.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
Nice.
And I'll let Nick answer what this one is, because I've sat in a booth with you and I've seen how much stuff you drink.
Well, excuse me, sir. Yeah. All right. We'll see what happens here in Berlin exactly. Now, you have been to Germany a few times, haven't you, Dave? How would you categorize the typical German in their whiskey? I'm going to call it the word habits, or their palate.
Again, I think it's actually really good. But first, really quick, you got to go?
I could probably do, if we go through this next one with some notes, I have to go meet the baby lady.
Yeah, Nick has a baby on the way, so he has
excellent. Wow, congratulations, man!
Look at his belly; he's very far along.
I'm hiding it from the computer, but I'm putting on the sympathy.
It's why he's not drinking whiskey right now. But
never drink whiskey during your pregnancy, all right?
But so he's going to have to step out in a minute. So we'll let you duck out when you need to.
Please do.
But for what's great is I find that in Germany people are very open to trying and drinking a lot of different things. They don't bring any kind of preconceived notions to the table, and are just looking to try and experience something new and different. And for us, that's great fun. It's taken a long time for craft spirits in the US to get to that point where people were like, oh, I do want to try something different. When we started, we didn't even tell people that we made single grain whiskeys, because that was too weird. And people would be like, you can't do that. And they're like, this is wrong. Doesn't work. They just didn't know what to do.
Does not compute.
Yeah. And which was really sad from the standpoint of, there is maybe 2 mash bills of bourbon that exist that dominate, just absolutely dominate. And you have kind of slight different flavors depending on age, or and less distillery, but really just age, and that's it. And that's unfortunate, because like if you look at Scotland, like these guys all make the same mash bill. It's
100% malted barley. Yep.
Yeah, but you have all these different flavors depending upon where it's made, by the equipment, climate, and then how they finish everything. And the U.S. was just very much like singly, like it's this, and anything different is bad. So it took a long time to kind of break that out. Craft beer did a great job of helping with that effort.
Yep.
Exactly. And what I found is going into Germany, you don't have any of that. People are just like, what do you got? Let me try it. This is cool.
Exactly. Surprise me.
Yeah. And so to me, it's a very well educated palate that's willing to try different things, and just cares about what tastes good. And that's awesome. I love that.
Now, Luna actually asked the question. I'm sorry, I forgot about this. Is there a huge difference between the yeast strains used in America and those that are now used in Scotland? Have you noticed any differences there, or Shelley?
There, They are different, yes. Are they dramatically different? I would say yes, just in profile that they produce. Even amongst like the big Kentucky guys versus what we use, I'd say our yeast is closer to what Scottish yeast might be.
Oh.
And without getting into any kind of real proprietary stuff that we do. So, because you talk about like when people get kind of like, it's the yeast that make a big difference because they will add specific flavors to it. So yeah, there's a difference between Scottish and American yeast that goes into this. The craft guys have been working with a lot of different ones as well. That's added an extra variable that's pretty cool. In general, all the big guys out of Kentucky are all relatively similar. They might have slight variations where they have their own strain that they're propagating. And it's like kind of it's the time when you say same, but different. It's like Coke versus Pepsi a little bit, maybe a better way to describe it. Gotcha. But yeast is a huge thing. And then the extra step beyond of the friendly bugs, right, in a distillery, that's a huge influence. So when you're tasting, say, Barton versus, Four Roses, a lot of that is going to be like, that's the facility and the wild yeast that they have in it. It's not necessarily the yeast that you're using. Exactly. We like to say that if you took our setup, even we gave you the yeast and everything, and you took it and you moved it to, say, Texas, it just doesn't taste the same at all. It really does matter where it's made.
You said within like a 4-block area, there's how many breweries around you now?
10 breweries, 2 cideries, a meadery, and an urban winery.
Exactly. It just blew my mind because when I grew up in Richmond, Midlothian back then, that area of the town, 1990, was not the place for all of that.
No, it was not. And even, think about, you had Hofbrauhaus, and Legend Brewery, and that was it. And they were like, oh, look, guys are making their own beer. That's cool. People weren't even really making it at home. And now it's like, we've got, how many breweries do we have just in the city? Like 60? I think we have like 60 to 70 breweries in the city.
Probably, when I go west of where I live and then south from where we are to my house and where I have to go now, I'm probably going to drive past 30 breweries.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. But you know what? It's that, again, that gets back to there's a ton of innovation. It's not to say that everything that's made is good, but there is good stuff happening. And, you can't make something really, really good without trying different things. So I'm all about the innovation and giving it a good shot.
And you have a lot of people, which I think is great, a lot of people that are fine with making something that's just fine. Yep. And that works for them too. And they're, for their clientele and the vibe that they create when you go visit them, there's a lot of that as well.
Yeah. But the really good guys look at these people and they learn from other people's mistakes, from their own mistakes. It helps elevate the industry as a whole. And so there's a nice synergy between the craft beer, the craft spirits, and even like the proliferation of wine that we have here in Virginia. We all work together. Collaborating is just great fun.
Good.
We wouldn't have had Milkman without the beer guys. So.
For example. Now, getting back to number B, so maybe Nick can guess what we have here. On the nose, we have more reserve than the Milkman, brown sugar, a little bit of cherry, mint again, the bread dough, the rum cake. So here we have bread dough again. The shortbread reminds me of a special cake in a family where shortbread is drenched in brandy and lots of buttercream and dark chocolate frosting. Schnapstorte. That sounds yummy, actually. Nice caramel, bit of wood, baking spices, buttery, creamy, vanilla pastries again, some cherries again as well, but a little bit fresher. We have dried apricots this time. Absolutely. See, I'm actually blind to banana. I don't get banana. I just don't in my whiskeys. Even when someone gives me Jack Daniels, it's like, it's Jack Daniels. Oh yeah, you get the banana. It's like, no, I get Jack Daniels.
Yeah.
I just don't get the banana. But all right, a little bit of banana bread and so on. So a little bit on the taste here. We have fresh black bread with a little bit of butter, a little bit of marmalade with rum in there. It's very cool. It's very delicious. Here we have the taste. Now I found that I can drink and don't have to wait for the birthday Schnapstorte anymore. This is delicious, he says. So on the palate, brown sugar, molasses, tobacco, very, very good. And here was something. Yep. Okay. He already wrote that down there. So we have, I think, everything. Is it the rye or is it the bourbon? What do you think?
The banana notes make me think it is a shoe-in for the rye.
Really? See, I would go away from that. I'm gonna go for bourbon. Yeah,
you're gonna go for bourbon. Well, all right. So let me.
For me, I have very distinct things that I pick up in the rye, and I get vegetal notes all day long, like green pepper, and I get some anise, and I get something that I don't think y'all get in Germany, but I get sweet tea on the nose. You know, I don't.
No, we have a little bit like Lipton tea, but we have it with lemon or with peach flavor.
Yeah,
it's not the same.
just sweet black tea, sweet. You know.
Oh yeah, I led that when I was back down in Texas. That was good stuff.
Yeah, so
Virginia has it as well, but I'm sorry, Texas makes better tea.
Oh God, I don't know, but we're gonna have to do a taste test now.
Okay, good.
But that's why I would go. Why I'd lean more towards the bourbon, because a lot of what you're talking about are things that I get in bourbon.
Yep.
And what I'm missing in the notes is what I particularly get in the rye.
Good. It is the bourbon. Yay, Dave for the win.
You know, wisdom. All this gray hair.
Yeah, all that gray hair here. Exactly. So that's the way it is. So now let's go to the B. Now we know the B has to be the rye, but I still invite everyone out there to write down your tasting notes to see if maybe Nick will get this right before he leaves. Who knows?
Right,
yeah, I gotta run.
Okay.
Yeah, bye-bye. Thank you very much for helping us out here.
Super fun way to do a tasting. I'm probably going to borrow this from you when
Please do. It's not patented in any way.
When I administer tastings to everyone here, I think I like this format for rating our samples and whatnot. And I'll probably see you in a month in Berlin.
Exactly. Looking forward to it. Yeah.
Yeah, and anybody that's on this, is anybody going to Bar Convent at all?
No, the Bar Convent is actually not a consumer whiskey fair. It is actually a B2B type of fair.
I thought they had a day that they opened to the public.
You can buy a ticket. Actually, it's going to be like 38 euros to get in. It's actually worth it because once you get through the door, it's all you can drink for free. Over here in Germany, usually we pay per dram, so per glass, and so it's a totally different experience. So try to get in if you can. I'll be there. Dave will be there. Many other people from the industry will be there. And it's just not whiskey. It's really all the different spirits that are available, from gin to rum to tequila to whatever else is out there, including whiskey and a lot of other unique and way out there stuff.
It's really, I know we've got the Discus spot is going to be filled with a lot of great American stuff, but the Hobbit table, I'm going to be with Kilchoman, Glen Springbank, Kilkerran, and Glen Farkless too, I think.
Yep, exactly.
It's like it's just a who's who of good stuff, and they usually have like a couple of other master distillers there as well. So I'll be the
belle of the ball.
I'll be the midget at the table, I suppose.
You're gonna be the gopher. They're gonna say, "Go for this, go for that," right?
But definitely, I mean, yeah, it's definitely worth the ticket for sure.
Yep.
All right, you want to do the last one?
I would love to. The people write down the last one here. Now, what else makes your distillery special? I did not know, for example, you actually use Virginia wood. I forgot about that. Excuse me. I know there's a law now. Is it Arkansas? No, it's Missouri. Missouri whiskey has to be made with Missouri wood, Missouri corn, and grain, as well as has to be aged and bottled in Missouri. But Virginia does not have laws like that yet.
I had not heard about this Missouri part yet. Where'd you see that?
That's about 2 years ago. They actually put that law into
So basically, probably it sounds like what they're doing is they're doing a little bit like what we're doing in Virginia, where they're making a Missouri appellation, right? Because so obviously we can't make Kentucky bourbon in Virginia, but we can make bourbon. And one of the things that I do, just for everybody on this call, I'm actually chairman of the Virginia Spirits Board, which is a governor appointed board type thing. And our job as when we're on this board is essentially what we're doing is we're working to establish Virginia as an appellation, both domestically and internationally. And we've got a nice little budget where the state, any bottle of whiskey that is made in Virginia, that is sold in Virginia, a percentage of that tax then comes back to us, and we use it to kind of market and do stuff. And like a project there would be similar to what you're talking about in Missouri, which is saying like, okay, if you were to make something here, like what is a Virginia product? And it could be, well, it's all grown here, all the wood is here. The Missouri thing sounds pretty limiting. And I'll say it because like, if you look at any Kentucky distillery, not all the barrels are made in Kentucky. Nope. They're just not. Where does the grain come from? It doesn't come from Kentucky. It's just made there. And then it's aged there. And the thing that's, when you get down to it, the thing that's special about Kentucky, they'll talk about like really one thing mainly, and that's the water. They're like, oh, the water is really special. And, you know, it's like, and that's true. It is. They can pull it from the ground, not even have to filter it, and then put it into the whiskey making process. And that's great. Scotch guys will always talk about like water is really important. Well, guess what? You can also take water and condition it and recreate that exact same water anywhere in the world. So it's not really limited to that area. But what is limited to that area is climate, how those barrels age in Kentucky. It is really crucial the seasons that they have, because you need the hot and then the cold and then the hot again and the cold. That helps. A barrel acts like a lung, and it helps push the liquor in and out of the wood. And you're going to get very different aging than, say, in Texas, where it's all the same temperature year round. Or where I learned up in New York in Tunneltown, that place gets really cold. Like, and I mean really cold in the winter. And then in the summers, it's like it gets kind of hot for 1 month. It's not very long, you know, and it's like, but it's mostly kind of like winter and fall up there. And so they have very different aging than, say, Texas, right? And you know, one of the things that I did, even going back to, you know, buying other people's barrels and putting it here, there were a bunch of barrels that were for sale in Wyoming and no, I'm sorry, Wisconsin, one of the W states, really from north. And people uniformly were like, this was a distillery that was shut down. I'm not going to hurt anybody's feelings, but it shut down, and they had a whole bunch of barrels, and nobody wanted the barrels because it didn't taste any good. And so I had this concept in my head. I was like, well, maybe it's because it's sitting up there. People have a preconceived notion of, okay, well, it's this old, it should taste this way. But if it's sitting in the cold, it's really aging in a different way. So I was like, maybe if I take them and I park them in my rick house, it'll get better. So that experiment's still playing out. But that's, you know, that's the kind of thing that you look at. And when you look at appellations and regionality of stuff, it all kind of plays in. But the big key things these days that I see that's really starting to come to pass is people had started playing with heirloom grain varietals. But like a step beyond that, that's more economical and makes just pragmatically a lot more sense, is grain that's grown near where you are distilling. And the terroir just really matters. So grain from Virginia is different from grain from Kentucky. It's different from grain from the Dakotas. When you taste the rye, it is going to taste totally different. It has just got way more pepper to it. It's got more spice. It's got even a little bit of a sweet roundness to it, but it's not like some of these ryes that you taste that are candied. And even outside of Virginia, if you take Catoctin Creek, which has been in Germany before, you put their rye next to ours, our distilleries are actually about 2 hours away from each other.
Right.
And they're using grain grown near them, and we're using grain grown near us. Those two things are very different, right? They're, but it's not to say one is better than the other. They just taste different, and that's awesome. I love it.
I do too. All right, so just so we talk about the same thing real quick, and then we'll move over to the tasting notes here. What I learned a lot about rye was this book, The Spirit of Rye, from Carlo De Vito.
Okay.
Absolutely beautiful. 300 different rye whiskeys from America. He talks about all the different types of grain and all that's going on there. That's just a wonderful source of a lot of information there.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so
yeah, I saw really briefly. He talks about Pennsylvania rye, which in the old days was a very, very big thing. Like Baltimore,
we have the Maryland rye. We have
they had very specific stills. They had 3-chambered stills that we're using, and I've had the pleasure of tasting a lot of these really, really old ryes and seeing what they actually tasted like back then. Distinctly different and really beautiful. And some people are trying to actually recreate those flavor profiles.
So some brothers out there in the Midwest.
Yeah. They've done a good job. That is one of I want to say it's either 3 or 4 working versions of those.
Yeah.
That's still 3-chambered still. Look it up.
Yep. All right. So on the nose we have caramel, milled almonds, light roasted aromas, marshmallows. We have here green apple, pear, apricot, elderberry syrup. On the nose, we have cooked peppers, herbs, a little bit of licorice maybe, spearmint. Also in the nose, we have fresh sugar cane syrup, dried apricots again, but sweeter, like glazed. Also here, herbal peppers. So the like a molasses. Let's just call it molasses.
Okay.
Caramel as a taste, mint chocolate, black tea, a little bit of vegetal moment.
There's the black tea. And veg. The black tea and veg. That's like my big number one thing.
That's your identification factor there. Yeah, green tea, a little bit of sea. I have no idea what buckthorn is, but that's okay. Caramel, and
like buckwheat?
Maybe buckwheat. I don't know. We don't
a grain type.
Okay. And Expedition Whiskey has a lot of mint today. Sorry. Don't be sorry about anything. That's perfectly okay. I actually today prefer the bourbon over the rye. Sometimes I like the rye better, but my favorite is the Milkman. So now what we can do, this is where everyone that has a set, I think there's like 6 or 7 people out there actually tasting with us at this moment. I would love for you to actually go to this little, nope, wrong one. Come on, give me the... So go to my survey and fill in your ranking, please. I'll put it up on the screen. There we go. So just put in the A, B, C, D, E and your ranking. I hope C will win. I don't know, but we'll see which one is the best, the second best, and so on. And I'll share those results in a second. So according to your opinion here, Dave, what is usually going to win? Is it going to be the Milkman? Is it going to be the rye, the bourbon, the wheat, or the Hunter and Scott?
I would say in Germany, and believe it or not, this is purely dependent on where it is because different cultures and places pick different different whiskeys as to the winner. I'm going to say it's going to be the Milkman in this case. If we were in the UK, I'd say it was going to be the Hunter and Scott.
I think so too as well. You're not wrong there. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, Zandorn. Zandorn is actually a fruit on a bush over here. It's like a berry. It's orange. I have no idea how to translate that. Okay. So here, a swallow thorn is what they're called. Okay, it's a Zandorn. All right.
Okay.
Very, very good. So Sven says, my sample B is empty. What does that say to me? So while we're waiting for them to vote, there was one question from Luna again, which I thought was very, very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Can actually a single state, for example, except for maybe the Midwest, Iowa could provide enough grain for everyone in the world, provide enough grain for all distilleries of a state. For example, I was talking with Wilderness Trail. I think they're now at number 7, the 7th largest whiskey distillery in the United States. And they basically use corn within 30 minutes. They have enough farms that they can act. They know their farmers. They have that, and that's no problem. You say you use 2 farms. Sometimes you have to
I got
forget.
three.
You have three now. Yes. Excuse me.
Yeah.
Sometimes we forget that a distillery doesn't actually use as much grain as, for example, a large farm does.
Yeah. That's actually a great question. The way you need to think about it is this. If you're going to fill a single barrel of whiskey, I'm going to do a little math here because, why not? If you're going to fill a single barrel of whiskey, right, it's typically, and this is why you see 400 or 500 gallon increments of equipment. I took Jason through this at the distillery. That's about how much you need in order to fill a single 53 gallon barrel.
Right.
That's why. So typically speaking, you're going to need roughly about, call it roughly 16 bushels of grain to fill a 53 gallon barrel.
Now translate a bushel into kilos, so I understand what you're talking about. Everyone else,
it's about 23 to 25 kilos.
All right, so let's go for 25 kilos times. You said how many bushels do we need?
About 16.
Okay.
And that's the amount of grain that you need in order to fill a 53 gallon barrel at about 63.5 ABV or 62.
All
right, 62.
So about 360 kilos worth of grain you need to fill a 200-liter barrel with 62.5%.
Okay, so now let's talk about
which is not wrong, because over in Europe we say often with Scotch it's about 1 kilo of malted barley for one bottle, 0.7 at 40%. And so we're roughly about the same thing there.
Yeah, they're generally malted barley and well, corn is going to have the most sugar. It makes the most liquor. Malted barley is a little bit less. Rye is absolutely the worst. It makes 40% less. It destroys everything. So we're just not going to consider that. But just let's work with barley and corn. If you do that,
Walsh, nice to see you.
They're going to surely could supply certain states. Yeah. An acre of corn. Does anybody want to wager how much an acre of corn can produce from one grow?
So as my brother-in-law and my father-in-law are farmers and they've grown corn before, I'm not going to say anything. We'll wait a moment and see if people can actually write that down here. Unfortunately, we think in a hectare instead of an acre, but basically it's let's double an acre to make 1 hectare. It's 0.4 something, but it's close enough, right?
Okay. So anybody want to wager? How about this?
Let's see.
Our corn farmer is the world record holder.
Really?
For corn. Yeah. And he did like 630 bushels or something like that. Some in number. That is an insane number. All right. So cap it up there. But if you want to say 630, or let's say 600, you're getting 600 bushels, right? That means that I can make 37 barrels from that 1 acre.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. And that's one grow. How many times can you grow? Thanks, Peter.
No, he bought it in Atlanta. Excellent. It's now in Germany, by the way. It's selling out quickly. If you want to buy something,
there'll be more gone. Don't worry.
Yeah.
So if you're probably you're growing 3 times a year on a single plot of land, roughly.
Well, corn we do once, and then we go over to maybe soybeans, or we go over to rape oil, or we go over to something else. So yeah.
Okay.
So we won't do corn 3 times in one season.
Let's just then say for
purposes
1 acre equals 37. Okay. And we're doing, like, here at Reservoir, we do roughly about 22,000 proof gallons, right?
Yep.
And that is, so we'll then tell you.
Andrea says, we want Milkman. We want Milkman. Bring us Milkman.
Let's get 22,000 divided by, that's going to be, let's just call that 50. All right, that's 440 barrel. And we're say divide that by 37. we only need to support our annual production. And we're not a huge distillery, but we're not a small distillery either. We need 12 acres.
Yep, exactly.
That's how much grain is produced per acre. So yeah, like
we can get in Germany about 100 tons per hectare of land. All right, so that's just the normal in Germany for the last couple of years. It goes between 98 and 112, but about 100 tons of corn per hectare.
Yeah,
that's a lot.
It's people don't recognize just how much that is. I mean, our farmers, what he mainly makes is corn chips.
Yeah, exactly.
But he supplies. I know that there are at least 8 distilleries that I can think of off the top of my head that buy grain from him. And he could probably supply all of Kentucky without blinking. Yeah. And he's just down the road from me. So I don't know what the annual consumption rate of distilleries are in the US, because we probably, I think we're maybe half the size of what Scotland does or something like that, possibly. But it's like, it doesn't even dent our right. agriculture. It's not even a percentage point.
No, it's not.
I mean, you go and look at it. I made it to Macallan after they built their new distillery.
Yes, me too.
Oh my God. Like, that thing can make liquor. Or have you ever been to Glen Ord?
No, I haven't.
Holy cow. Yeah. You go back in their still room.
Yeah.
It's as far as you can see, huge pot stills.
Yeah.
Not little ones. And I think that they were the number 3 distillery in the world. They're like millions of gallons a year. It's crazy.
Glen Ord is 11 million a year.
Yeah.
This is the best book about anything Scottish whiskey.
I don't know that one.
Oh, so this is there was called a whiskey Bible. Throw that in the trash and buy this. This is the Malt Whiskey Yearbook. Every year there's a new one. For each and every distillery, there's a nice little profile with all the data there. Best thing in the world.
I like the one. I forget the lady's name. She's a Japanese woman.
Yeah.
That wrote an extensive tome on all the distilleries in Scotland that we got. And the reason why we got it, I mentioned like Linar Mangle before, yes, and how nerdy we get. I have a pretty good Scotch collection, and we match, like, okay, let's look at different profiles and what does this equipment geometry actually do? And we take that and filter it back into here. It's a lot of fun. 3 of 5 are empty. Nice. Let me guys ask you this.
Let me show you the results first. All right. Yeah. So at the moment, the results. So we have here 7 people actually voted here. C won at the moment, which is our Milkman, followed very closely by B, which is our Bourbon, followed closely by A, our Rye, then our Wheat, and the Hunter and Scott is not the favorite of most of the people here. No problem.
Wow. Oh, and we never even talked about anybody want to guess how many different distilleries are in that Hunter and Scott?
No, tell us.
4 different distilleries.
Oh, okay. Very good. So 2 from Kentucky, 1 from Indiana, and yours.
Yep, exactly.
Excellent.
And obviously everybody knows the one in Indiana. The 2 from Kentucky were one that you might be able to guess, which is Kentucky Artisan.
Oh, good. Very good. The president and the founder was just inducted into the Kentucky Hall of Fame.
Yeah. We were very unfortunate to lose him this past year.
Okay.
He passed away. But really nice guy, really great guy. And then Chapter Creed.
Interesting.
Not everybody has had an opportunity to taste them. Some people, I like their stuff. Some people do not like them, but it's this stuff blended with these whiskeys created something that was very, very different than what. And that's the thing. It's like, well, the great thing about blending whiskeys is you can really create something that's wholly different and better than what you started with. So it's a lot of fun. And that's what Nick is like absolutely amazing at. And that's what you'll have to do the next time. We'll take we'll get Nick in here and we can take the bourbon, wheat, and rye and then maybe we can blend something.
Oh, okay. We're gonna make something then. Create
We
something.
can do like a small case lot thing for all your people on your show, and then we can run it through your importer, since it's just a one-off custom thing.
That sounds interesting. We can do that here.
Could be fun.
So let's see here. I'm looking to see if I'm actually on the website here of Hava and seeing if I can actually order anything special from Reservoir. They only have your wheat, your bourbon, your rye. They don't have any of the special stuff listed.
They haven't put it up there yet?
Or it's already gone. Either or.
I would just reach out to them. I mean, you know the steps, right? Reach out to them and see what they say. I've been trying to get with them just on being in Berlin in a couple of weeks. Is it like vacation time in August in Germany?
Yes, well, July and August is very, very special over here. Yes, starting tomorrow, basically everyone goes back to work more or less. Yeah, like in France.
So I'm going to wager that stuff they brought it in and they're sitting on that, waiting to do it. So it's probably still there. So that's the Francois Voyer. Let's see. Do I have a bottle of it? Actually,
I'll try to buy a whole case of it.
It's worth it for sure. This is the label. This is the Francois Voyer that they did in ours, and we tried to match the labels here. So it looks similar to this, but it's just called the Reservoir Cask Experience, and it's got a picture of the Francois label on it. There's that one, and then there's also the red wine finish, which is really, really good. And Jason, you've tried that one before.
Yes, I have.
Yeah. So if you like the bourbon and you like, dark pitted fruits and like a dry bourbon, which is something that you don't really see very often, there's a lot of tannins in that one, and it's a really neat expression of what you can do with the grain.
So we're going to start to actually land and end our stream here. Expedition Whiskey says, let me say you make great stuff. Applause.
Thank you.
Absolutely one of my favorite tastings in 2022 so far. Thank you very much.
Love
it. So maybe you can meet Dave extensively in Berlin. I had the privilege of spending time with you in Richmond, and maybe we can actually, after the fair, go out and have a meal together and enjoy a little bit. Will you be just coming over, Nick, or is Shelley going to join you as well?
No, it's Nick and I for this one, and so we would love to go out and explore some whiskey bars. There's some really, really great spots.
I'm going to have to take you. I promise. I have actually a customer now in Berlin. It's called The Hat. It's a jazz bar in Berlin.
I know it. It's over near Qdom. And
have you ever been there? I haven't. I have to go.
I've been on two different occasions, and it is a really, really nice place.
Yeah,
it's in one of the how the train
underneath the subway, right?
Yeah, the train goes over, and it's got the arch buildings. It's really cool. It's in that area, the Qdom, that's really more resi.
Yep.
So it's kind of like almost speakeasy-ish, because you're like, there's nothing around here, and then it's like this really cool jazz place. Yeah, it's awesome. So totally get it.
All right, Dave, what have we not covered that you might want to mention at the end?
Oh my gosh, there's so much to talk about. I would say, you know what, guys? I hope it came through. We'll answer anything. We'll talk about anything. We'll go on and on. If you've got any questions at all, and it doesn't even have to necessarily be about Reservoir. We've been doing this a long time. Shelley just wrote a book about it. Happy to answer any questions that you got. If you want to just fire them in, you can throw them through Jason or just hit me directly. But we're very open. We talk about everything we do. There's no secrets or gimmicks here. It's just the only thing that matters is, does it taste good? Do you want another?
Yep. Very, very good. So I put in the chat here your website, your Facebook, as well as your Twitter. So, perfect. And I think you're also on Instagram. So let's do that as well.
We are on Instagram.
All right.
And we're getting ready to redo the website and flip it back. We had it on a lower grade Shopify thing, and we're switching it back to something that has a lot more information on it. So,
all right. Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, as well as the website itself. Very, very good. All right. So it was a pleasure having you here.
Always a pleasure to see you, Jason, and thank you for having me. And you guys are great. Thanks for trying our stuff. This is what makes doing this fun.
I'm happy to hear that. Very good.
It really is.
So here we have, thanks for the tasting. It was really great. Makes you wish more people in the Scotch industry would be so open about their products and transparency.
Don't count on those guys to be anything other than just like, it's great.
It's great. Just believe it. All right. So, which bottles are available in Germany from tonight? The rye is available.
The rye, the bourbon, and the wheat.
The bourbon is available and the wheat is available. Those are the three that are available. So
Yes.
these three, the bottles look a little bit different now. You have 700 milliliters now. And
Yeah,
you put the wax all the way down, right?
Yeah. So I'm sure you guys have seen this with some imports. The supply chain issues are real. We cannot get 70 CL bottles. We just can't. But we still are packaging stuff as 70 CL. So you will see some of our 75 CL bottles short filled. And what we've done is, because it just looks weird when it's not filled all the way, we've been dipping the wax all the way down to cover the entire body of the bottle. So they look a little bit different. I hope they don't look too junky, but it's what we're doing right now just to kind of get through this supply chain stuff that everybody's dealing with.
Exactly. They're very, very strange times at the moment, right?
Yeah. I mean, look, it's again, all that matters is, does it taste good? Do you want another?
Exactly. Yes, and we do. All right. Dave, thanks very much. And thanks very much for all the people that watched here and actually participated. WhiskyJason here. You will see me also at various whiskey fairs all over Germany, trying to present different bourbons and ryes as well, and helping Germans to understand that there's more out there than just single malt Scotch whiskey from Islay in cask strength.
And Jason,
so that's my goal.
He has a lot of really, really good bourbons. I know a lot of the guys that he carries, like personally know them and what they make, and I've done projects with them. They're all great people, just like us, and they all care about what they make, and it's all really good. So try it all.
Very, very good. And look here, we'll be on the lookout for your products. Thank you very much.
All right, guys.